Elena wiped down the glass conference table for the third time that night. It had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect when you cleaned the top floors of Heartfelt Tower. One smudge, one streak, and you could lose this job. And Elena couldn't afford to lose another job. Her back ached as she pushed the cleaning cart down the marble hallway. The wheels squeaked softly in the silence. It was nearly midnight and the offices were empty. This was her favorite time. No executives rushing past her like she was invisible. No awkward moments when someone needed to get to the printer while she was mopping. Just her and the quiet. She'd been working here for 8 months now. 8 months of night shifts, sleeping during the day in the tiny apartment she shared with her younger sister. 8 months of pretending this was fine, that this was enough, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Elena stopped in front of the large conference room on the 42nd floor. Through the glass walls, she could see the city lights stretching out forever. Manhattan at night looked like a sea of stars. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass for just a moment, letting herself remember. 3 years ago, she'd been different. She'd walked through different doors, carried different things. A violin case instead of a mop bucket, sheet music instead of cleaning supplies. She'd been a student at Juilliard, one of the best music schools in the world. She'd been somebody with a future. Then came the phone call, the one that changed everything. A car accident on a rainy highway. Her parents driving home from her sister's school play. Gone in an instant. Elena blinked hard and pulled away from the window. She couldn't think about that. Not tonight. Not ever, really, because thinking about it meant feeling it and she couldn't fall apart. Her sister Maria needed her. Maria was 17 now, a senior in high school, and she deserved to finish her education. She deserved to go to college. She deserved better than what life had given them. So Elena cleaned offices at night and tried not to think about the life she'd lost. She finished the conference room and moved to the executive offices. Most were locked, but a few were open. She cleaned methodically, emptying trash cans, dusting surfaces, vacuuming floors. Her mind wandered as she worked. It always did. And when her mind wandered, it always went to the same place. Music. She could hear it in her head constantly. Melodies she'd learned years ago, pieces she'd been working on before she had to leave school. Sometimes the music in her head was so loud, so real, that she forgot where she was. Elena finished the last office and checked her watch. 12:30. She had another hour before her shift ended, and all her assigned areas were done. She bit her lip, thinking. Then she made a decision she'd been making more and more lately. She went back to her cart and opened the bottom compartment. Hidden under extra trash bags was a case. A violin case. It was old and battered, held together with duct tape in places. The violin inside wasn't much better. It had been her grandmother's, the instrument she'd learned on as a child. It couldn't compare to the instruments at Juilliard, but it was hers. And it still worked. Elena carried it to the big conference room, the one with the best acoustics. She'd discovered that by accident a few months ago when she'd hummed a little while cleaning. The sound had bounced off the glass and wood in the most beautiful way. She locked the door behind her even though no one was here. Even though she was alone, it just felt safer that way. Then she took out her violin. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted it to her chin. It had been 3 days since she'd last played. 3 days too long. She closed her eyes and began. The first notes were soft, tentative. She was rusty out of practice. But then something shifted. The music took over. Her fingers found their positions on the strings. Her bow moved with the certainty of muscle memory, and suddenly she wasn't a night maid in an empty office building. She was a musician again. She played a piece by Bach, one she'd always loved, then something by Mozart. Then she stopped following any particular composition and just played what she felt. Sadness and hope mixed together. Loss and dreams tangled up in the same melody. She didn't know how long she played. Time disappeared when she had her violin. The city lights blurred through her closed eyelids. The music filled the room, filled her, filled all the empty spaces inside that she usually tried to ignore. What Elena didn't know was that she wasn't alone. Alexander Hartwell stood in the darkened hallway outside the conference room, frozen in place. He'd been in his office working late again. He'd been working late every night for weeks now, trying to save his family's company from a hostile takeover, trying to prove he deserved his position as CEO, trying to outrun his own thoughts. He'd been about to leave when he heard it. Music. A violin. playing somewhere on his floor. At first he thought he was imagining it. Stress and exhaustion playing tricks on his mind. But no, it was real. He'd followed the sound and found her, a woman in a cleaning uniform, playing a violin in his conference room, playing like her life depended on it, playing like nothing else in the world existed. Alexander had grown up around music. His mother had insisted he and his siblings learn instruments, attend concerts, appreciate the arts. But he'd never heard anything like this. This wasn't technical perfection or practiced performance. This was a raw emotion translated into sound. This was someone pouring their soul out through a beaten-up violin that looked like it should be in a museum. He stood there for 20 minutes, maybe longer, just listening. His phone buzzed in his pocket 3 times. He ignored it. The stack of contracts waiting on his desk didn't matter. The board meeting tomorrow didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this music. For the first time in months, Alexander felt something other than stress and pressure. He felt peace. He felt like he could breathe again. When the music finally stopped, he didn't move. He watched the woman lower her violin slowly, like she was waking from a dream. She stood there for a moment, just breathing. Then she carefully packed her instrument away, wiped her eyes quickly, and unlocked the door. Alexander stepped back into the shadows of his office doorway as she passed. She didn't see him. She just pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, her shoulders a little straighter than before, and disappeared around the corner. He stood in the empty hallway for a long time after she was gone. The silence felt different now. The building felt different. He felt different. Alexander pulled out his phone and sent a text to his head of security. He needed to know who that woman was. He needed to hear that music again. It was the only thing that had made sense to him in a very long time. And somehow he knew his life had just changed. He just didn't know how much. Elena's phone rang at 9 in the morning, jolting her awake. She'd only been asleep for 4 hours. Her body felt heavy as she reached for the phone on her nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, probably a spam call. But something made her pick up. Hello? Is this Elena Martinez? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, who's calling? This is Patricia Chen from Human Resources at Heartfelt Tower. We need you to come in today for a meeting. 2 o'clock. Can you make it? Elena's heart dropped into her stomach. A meeting with HR was never good news. Someone must have reported her. Someone must have seen her using the conference room, playing her violin when she should have been working. She was going to get fired. Yes, I can be there. Good. Come to the HR office on the 15th floor. And Miss Martinez? Don't worry. You're not in trouble. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone. If she wasn't in trouble, then what was this about? She couldn't think of any good reason HR would call her in on her day off. She couldn't go back to sleep after that. She spent the next few hours in a state of nervous energy, trying on different outfits, wondering if she should bring her work uniform or dress normally. In the end, she settled on simple black pants and a clean white blouse. Professional, but not trying too hard. Maria was at school, thankfully. Elena didn't want to worry her sister. Not until she knew what was happening. The subway ride into Manhattan felt longer than usual. Elena kept checking the time on her phone, running through possibilities in her head. Maybe they were changing her shift. Maybe they were cutting hours. Maybe they were eliminating her position entirely. The Heartfelt Tower lobby looked different during the day. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows. People in expensive suits rushed past, talking on phones, carrying leather briefcases. Elena felt out of place in a way she never did at night. During her shift, the building was hers and the other cleaners. During the day, it belonged to people like them. She took the elevator to the 15th floor, her hands shaking slightly. Patricia Chen was exactly what Elena expected. Mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, a suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. But her smile seemed genuine as she shook Elena's hand. Thank you for coming in on short notice. Please sit down. Elena sat, gripping her purse in her lap. Patricia pulled out a file and opened it. You've been with us for 8 months now. Your performance reviews have been excellent. Your supervisor says you're reliable, thorough, and professional. Thank you, Elena managed. How would you feel about a position change? Elena blinked. A position change? Yes, we have an opening in our executive services department. Specifically, we need someone to manage and maintain the CEO's private office suite. The hours would be better, daytime instead of nights. The pay is significantly higher. And frankly, you've been recommended specifically for this role. Elena's mind went blank. The CEO's office? Someone had recommended her? Nothing about this made sense. I don't understand. Who recommended me? Patricia smiled. Mr. Hartwell himself requested you by name. The room tilted slightly. Alexander Hartwell, the CEO, knew her name?
How? Why?
But I've never even met him. Nevertheless, he was very specific. He said you have excellent attention to detail and a respect for the space. That's exactly what he's looking for. Patricia leaned forward. Miss Martinez, this is a significant opportunity. The position comes with benefits, including health insurance and an education stipend for continuing studies. I'd encourage you to consider it. Education stipend. Elena's heart hammered. She could take classes again. Maybe not full-time, but something. Anything. I accept, she heard herself say. Wonderful. You'll start Monday. Report to the executive floor at 8 a.m. Mr. Hartwell's assistant will train you on the specific requirements. Elena floated out of the office in a daze. She rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor without really thinking about it. She wanted to see the space again, during the day when it was filled with people. The executive floor was quieter than the lobby, but still busy. People moved with purpose, speaking in low voices. Elena felt invisible again, which was oddly comforting. She walked past the conference room where she'd played her violin just nights ago. Through the glass walls, she could see people in a meeting, laptops open, serious expressions. It felt like a different world from the one she knew at midnight. Can I help you? Elena turned. A woman in her 60s stood there, silver hair pulled back, glasses on a chain around her neck. She had the look of someone who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. I'm sorry, I was just leaving. I'm Elena Martinez. I'm going to be starting here on Monday. The woman's expression softened slightly. The new office assistant. I'm Catherine Wilson, Mr. Hartwell's executive assistant. I suppose I'll be the one training you. I look forward to it. Catherine studied her for a moment. You're the night cleaner, aren't you? I've seen you before in passing. Elena nodded, wondering if this woman knew more than she was saying. Well then, you already know the space. That's good. Catherine paused. Mr. Hartwell is very particular about his environment. He needs quiet to think. He appreciates efficiency, and he values discretion above almost everything else. Can you provide those things? Yes, ma'am. Good, I'll see you Monday morning. 8 sharp. That weekend passed in a blur. Elena told Maria about the new position, watching her sister's face light up with excitement. She bought new clothes for work, simple but professional pieces from a discount store. She tried not to think about why Alexander Hartwell had requested her specifically. It didn't make sense unless he'd heard her playing, unless he'd been there in the building and heard her music. The thought made her feel exposed and terrified and something else she couldn't quite name. Monday morning arrived. Elena stood outside the doors to the executive suite at 7:55, smoothing down her skirt for the 100th time. At exactly 8 o'clock, she pushed through the doors. The suite was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture mixed with pieces that looked antique. Everything was elegant but not showy. It felt like a space designed for thinking, not impressing. Catherine appeared and walked her through the daily routine. Organizing files, managing correspondence, maintaining the conference areas, keeping Mr. Hartwell's office pristine. The work wasn't difficult, just detailed. Everything had its place. Everything had its purpose. Mr. Hartwell usually arrives by 9, Catherine explained. He doesn't like interruptions during his first hour. He uses that time to review and plan his day. Your morning task should be completed by then. Elena absorbed everything, taking mental notes. And one more thing, Catherine said, her voice dropping slightly. You may notice some unusual items in Mr. Hartwell's office. Books on subjects that seem unrelated to business. Sketches and drawings. A music stand by the window. Don't touch those. Don't move them. Don't ask about them. Understood? Understood. A music stand. Elena's pulse quickened. At 9:15, the elevator doors opened and Alexander Hartwell stepped out. Elena's first thought was that he looked tired. Her second thought was that he looked younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s. He wore an expensive suit, but his tie was slightly loose. And he carried a coffee cup from a regular street vendor, not some fancy cafe. He walked past the reception area where Elena was organizing files, and for just a second their eyes met. He stopped. Time seemed to freeze. Elena saw recognition flash across his face, followed by something that looked almost like relief. "You must be Miss Martinez," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. I started today. I hope you'll be comfortable here." His voice was careful, measured, but his eyes held something else entirely. A question. A secret he knew. He'd heard her play. He'd been there that night somewhere in the shadows. Listening. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hartwell." He nodded once and continued to his office. Closing the door behind him, Elena stood there, files forgotten in her hands, her mind racing. This job wasn't random. This wasn't luck. Alexander Hartwell had brought her here deliberately, and she needed to understand why. But more than that, something else nagged at her. In that brief moment when their eyes met, she'd seen something she recognized. Loneliness. Exhaustion. The look of someone carrying weight they couldn't put down. She'd seen it in her own mirror often enough, maybe. They weren't so different after all, the CEO and the maid. Maybe they were both just people trying to survive in a world that demanded too much. The thought should have comforted her. Instead, it made everything feel more complicated. 3 weeks passed before Alexander finally spoke to her about the music. Elena had settled into her new routine. She arrived at 8, completed her tasks efficiently, and tried to remain invisible. It wasn't hard. Most executives barely looked at support staff anyway. But Alexander was different. He noticed things. He noticed when she rearranged the books on his shelf by height instead of topic, and quietly changed them back. He noticed when she brought her lunch from home instead of buying it. He noticed everything, and it made her nervous. She also noticed things about him, like how he rubbed his temples when he was stressed, how he stood at the window for long stretches just staring at the city, how he sometimes sketched buildings on the corners of documents, then quickly erased them like he'd done something wrong, how the music stand by his window gathered dust because he never used it. They existed in the same space but different worlds. Until the evening everything changed. It was past 7. Elena had stayed late to finish organizing a filing system that Catherine had requested. Most people had gone home. The office was quiet in a way that reminded her of her old night shifts. She was putting away the last files when she heard it. Piano music coming from Alexander's office. Elena froze. The music was hesitant, halting. Someone playing who knew how but was out of practice. The melody was beautiful though, even with the mistakes. Something classical that she recognized but couldn't name. The music stopped suddenly, then started again. Stopped, started. She should leave. She should grab her bag and go home. But her feet carried her toward his office instead. The door was open a few inches. She could see him sitting at an upright piano she hadn't noticed before, probably hidden behind a panel that folded away. He played the same section again, stumbled on the same note, and stopped with a frustrated sigh. "You're rushing the transition," Elena said before she could stop herself. Alexander turned sharply, startled. For a moment they just stared at each other. Then something in his expression shifted. "Show me," he said quietly. Elena's heart pounded. She should apologize and leave. Instead, she walked into his office. It felt like crossing an invisible line she couldn't uncross. She stood beside the piano. "May I?" He slid over on the bench, making room. Elena sat down, very aware of the space between them, the expensive fabric of his suit sleeve near her arm. She played the section he'd been struggling with, letting the notes flow naturally. "See, you're thinking too much. Let the music breathe. Play more," he said. It wasn't quite a request and not quite a command, so she did. She played the rest of the piece from memory, her fingers finding their way across keys she hadn't touched in years. When she finished, the silence felt heavy. "That night in the conference room," Alexander said finally, "I heard you. I've been hearing you for weeks before that, actually. Your violin." Elena's hands fell to her lap. "I'm sorry." "I know I shouldn't have. Don't apologize." His voice was firm. "Your music is the only thing that's helped me sleep in months." "Do you know what that's like? To lie awake night after night, your mind racing with problems you can't solve, and then to hear something so beautiful that your thoughts finally go quiet." She looked at him. Really looked at him. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a person who was barely holding on. Yes, she said softly. I know exactly what that's like. Why did you stop playing? You're gifted. You should be performing, not cleaning offices. He paused. Not that there's anything wrong with your work here. I didn't mean, I know what you meant. Elena took a breath. I was at Juilliard 3 years ago, but my parents died and my younger sister needed someone to take care of her. Music school doesn't pay the bills. I'm sorry, don't be. I made my choice. Maria is going to graduate high school this year, maybe even get into college. That matters more than anything I could have done with my music. Alexander was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. What if you didn't have to choose? What if you could take care of your sister and pursue your music? Elena stood up from the piano bench. Mr. Hartwell, Alexander, please. Alexander. The name felt strange on her tongue. I appreciate the job you've given me. The pay increase has already made a huge difference. But I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's... He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect corporate style. I have a proposition. A business arrangement. I'm listening. Play for me. Every evening after work hours. 1 hour of music. In exchange, I'll sponsor your return to music school. Part-time enrollment. I'll cover tuition and your sister's expenses so you don't have to worry about money. You can work here during the day, study in the evenings when you're not playing, and actually pursue your talent. Elena's throat tightened. Why would you do that? Because your music saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. Because I can afford it and it would mean everything to you and cost me almost nothing. He paused, and selfishly because I want to hear you play every day. This is crazy. Maybe. But I've spent my whole life doing the responsible thing. Running this company because it's what my family expects. Making decisions based on duty instead of passion. I gave up architecture because my father said it wasn't practical. I stopped playing piano because there wasn't time. I followed every rule and now I'm 35 years old and I can't remember the last time I felt anything but tired. He looked directly at her. Your music makes me feel alive again. Is that really so crazy? Elena's mind raced. This was too much, too generous, too risky. What would people think? What would Catherine say? What would Maria say? But underneath all those worries was something else. Hope. Dangerous, foolish hope. One condition, she said. You start playing piano again, too. If I'm going to pursue my music, you should pursue yours. A smile tugged at his lips. The first real smile she'd seen from him. Deal. They shook hands. His grip was warm and firm, and he held on a second longer than necessary. When do we start? Elena asked. Tomorrow. 6 o'clock. Bring your violin. That night, Elena told Maria everything. Her sister listened with wide eyes, asking questions, worrying out loud about what this meant. What if people get the wrong idea? Maria asked. What if they think you're, Let them think whatever they want, Elena said, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. This is about music. About getting to finish what I started. About not letting our parents' dreams for me die just because they did. Maria hugged her tight. Mom and Dad would be proud of you. Elena hoped that was true. The next evening, Elena returned to the 42nd floor with her violin case. Her hands shook as she walked to Alexander's office. This was real. This was happening. He was waiting by the window, the city lights behind him. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Ready? He asked. Elena opened her case and lifted out her grandmother's old violin. It looked shabby in this elegant office, worn and patched. But when she played the first note, none of that mattered. She played for an hour. Pieces she'd learned at Juilliard. Music she'd written herself. Songs that had lived in her head for 3 years with nowhere to go. And Alexander listened with his eyes closed, his breathing finally even and calm. When she finished, he opened his eyes. Thank you. Your turn, she said. I showed you mine. He moved to the piano and played. He was rusty, making mistakes, but there was something beautiful in the imperfection. He was trying. He was reaching for something he'd thought was lost. When the music ended, they sat in comfortable silence. Can I ask you something? Elena said. Why are you really doing this? The truth. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Because I spent so many nights lying awake, feeling trapped by expectations and responsibilities. And then I heard your music and realized I wasn't the only one. We're both stuck, Elena. Both giving up our dreams for duty. Maybe we can't escape completely. but maybe we can help each other remember who we wanted to be. Elena understood then. This wasn't about him saving her or her saving him. This was about two people who'd lost themselves finding a way back. Together. Same time tomorrow? She asked. Same time tomorrow. Elena left his office that night feeling lighter than she had in years. She didn't know where this strange arrangement would lead. She didn't know if it was wise or foolish. But for the first time since her parents died, she felt like herself again, and that was worth the risk. For 6 weeks, everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Elena enrolled in 2 evening classes at a local music conservatory. Music theory on Tuesdays and Thursdays, performance technique on Wednesdays. She'd arrive at the office early, work through the day, play for Alexander at 6, then rush to her 7:30 classes. It was exhausting, but in the best possible way. She was learning again, growing again, becoming herself again. And Alexander kept his promise too. He practiced piano every evening after she played. Sometimes they'd talk between pieces, sharing stories about their families, their dreams, the versions of themselves they'd lost along the way. Other times they'd just play, letting the music speak for them. But perfect things never last. Elena should have known that. The trouble started with whispers. She'd catch other assistants glancing at her in the break room, then looking away quickly. Conversations would stop when she walked past. Catherine's expressions grew more concerned each day, though she never said anything directly. Then came the morning when Elena arrived to find a woman waiting outside Alexander's office. She was tall and elegant, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek style, and her jewelry was simple but clearly expensive. Everything about her screamed old money and high society. "You must be the new assistant," the woman said, looking Elena up and down. Her tone was pleasant, but her eyes were cold. "I'm Victoria Chen, Alexander's fiancée. Former fiancée, I suppose, but we're working on fixing that." Elena's stomach dropped. "I'll let Mr. Hartwell know you're here. No need. I'll let myself in. We don't stand on ceremony." Victoria walked past her and straight into Alexander's office without knocking. Through the glass wall, Elena could see Alexander stand up, surprise and something that looked like frustration crossing his face. Catherine appeared at Elena's elbow. "Don't worry about her. She's been trying to get him back for months. He's not interested." "It's none of my business," Elena said quietly. "Isn't it, though?" Catherine gave her a knowing look. "People talk, dear. About the evening music sessions. About how much time you two spend together. About the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It's not like that. It's just music. He's helping me with school. I believe you, but not everyone will. And Victoria definitely won't." Catherine squeezed her arm gently. "Just be careful. The world these people live in has different rules. You and I were not part of it. We never will be." The meeting between Alexander and Victoria lasted 2 hours. When Victoria finally emerged, she had a satisfied smile that made Elena's skin crawl. She stopped at Elena's desk. "It was nice meeting you. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other soon." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. A word of advice from one woman to another. Men like Alexander don't end up. "You're leaving?" Alexander stood in his office doorway, loosening his tie like he always did before their sessions. "I have class tonight. I should go. Class isn't until 7:30. You always play first." He stepped closer, studying her face. "What did Victoria say to you?" "Nothing important." "Elena." The way he said her name made her look up. "Please don't lie to me." "What did she say?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "She said I'm a charity project. A diversion. That men like you don't end up with women like me." Elena laughed bitterly. "But she's right, isn't she? I'm the maid you're helping because you feel sorry for me." "Is that what you think?" Alexander's voice was sharp. "That I'm doing this out of pity? I don't know what to think anymore. People are talking. Catherine warned me. And now your ex-fiancé shows up and acts like you're already back together." "Victoria is not my fiancé. Not anymore. We broke up over a year ago because she cared more about the merger between our family's companies than about me. And yes, she wants me back, but only because her father's business is struggling and marrying me would solve that problem." "Then why was she here for 2 hours?" "Because my uncle invited her to the board meeting next week. Because he thinks I should reconsider the relationship for business reasons." Because everyone in my life thinks I should make decisions based on what's good for the company instead of what's good for me. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Do you know what she said when we were together? She said my interest in architecture was a cute hobby, and that playing piano was a waste of time that could be spent networking. She didn't see me. She saw a title and a bank account. Elena's anger deflated slightly. I'm sorry. That sounds lonely. It was lonely, until I heard someone playing violin at midnight like her life depended on it, until I met someone who understands what it's like to sacrifice your dreams for duty. He took a step closer. You're not a charity project, Elena. You're the most real thing in my life. The air between them felt electric. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This is complicated, she whispered. I know. People will judge. They'll say terrible things. I know that too. Your family, your business partners, they won't accept someone like me. Then maybe I need to stop caring so much about what they accept. Alexander's voice was steady, certain. I've spent my entire life following other people's plans for me, being who they wanted me to be. And I was miserable, completely miserable. Then you walked into my life with your grandmother's violin and your stubborn pride and your incredible talent. And suddenly I remembered what it feels like to want something for myself. Elena couldn't breathe. Alexander, you don't have to say anything. I just need you to know that Victoria is wrong. You're not a charity project or a diversion. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. You're the person who reminds me who I wanted to be before the world told me who I had to be. Before Elena could respond, his phone buzzed. Then again, then a third time in rapid succession. Alexander pulled it out and his face went pale. No. What's wrong? He showed her the screen. It was a photo from some business gossip website. The headline read, Heartwell CEO's secret romance with staff member. The photo showed them through the glass wall of his office, standing close together, talking. The angle made it look intimate, inappropriate. Who took this? Elena felt sick. It doesn't matter. Alexander was already dialing his phone. I need to do damage control before the board sees this. His phone rang before he could finish. He looked at the caller ID and closed his eyes. It's my Uncle Richard. Elena watched as Alexander answered, his expression shifting from frustrated to resigned to something that looked like defeat. The conversation lasted 5 minutes. When it ended, he set his phone down carefully like it might shatter. The board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. They're concerned about my judgment, about the company's reputation. My uncle thinks this is proof I'm not fit to lead during the merger negotiations. He laughed without humor. Apparently caring about something other than profit margins makes me a liability. What are you going to do? Alexander looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, empty. I'm going to do what I always do. What's expected of me? What's best for the company? Elena's heart sank. She knew what was coming before he said it. This arrangement needs to end. I'll still pay for your schooling, for Maria's expenses. I'll honor all my commitments. But we can't continue the evening sessions. We can't. He couldn't finish the sentence. I understand, Elena said, even though she didn't. Even though it felt like something was breaking inside her chest. Elena, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to hurt you. She picked up her violin case with shaking hands. You know what the worst part is? Victoria was right. You are going to do what's expected. You're going to choose duty over everything else, just like I did. We're exactly the same, you and I. Both too afraid to actually reach for what we want. That's not fair, isn't it? Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. Goodbye, Alexander. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll finish out my notice period if you want, or I can leave now. Whatever's easier for you. Please don't go. But Elena was already walking toward the elevator, her vision blurred, her whole body numb. She heard him call her name one more time, but she didn't turn around. In the elevator alone, she finally let herself cry. Not because she was losing the financial support, though that hurt. Not because she was losing her job, though that scared her. She cried because for 6 perfect weeks, she'd let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone saw her as more than a responsibility or a problem to solve. She'd been wrong. When the elevator doors opened in the lobby, Elena wiped her eyes and walked out into the cold October evening. She had class in an hour. Life went on, even when your heart was breaking. It always did. 3 months passed like a slow, painful blur. Elena threw herself into her music with an intensity that worried Maria. She took on extra shifts at a cafe near campus to make up for the income she'd lost. She practiced until her fingers ached. She studied until her eyes burned. She did everything she could to not think about Alexander Hartwell. It didn't work. Every time she played her violin, she remembered those evening sessions in his office. Every time she walked past Hartwell Tower on her way to class, her chest tightened. She'd quit her position there the day after their fight, unable to bear the thought of working so close to him while being so far away. Catherine had called her twice, leaving voicemails that Elena couldn't bring herself to listen to. Alexander had transferred money to her account for tuition, but she'd returned it. She didn't want his guilt money. She'd figure it out on her own the way she always had. But the real shock came in late January when her music professor pulled her aside after class. "Elena, I've entered you in the New York Metropolitan Orchestra's Young Artist Competition. The audition is in 2 weeks." Elena's heart stopped. "Professor Davis, I can't. I'm not ready for something like that." "You're more than ready. I've been teaching for 30 years and you're one of the most talented students I've ever had. This competition could change your life. The winner gets a solo performance with the orchestra and a recording contract. But the entrance fee, already paid. Anonymous donor through the school. Someone believes in you, Elena. Maybe it's time you believed in yourself too." Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to say it was too much too soon, but another part of her, the part that had dreamed of this since she was 7 years old, whispered yes. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Elena practiced 6 hours a day, taking leave from her cafe job, surviving on instant noodles and coffee. Maria helped her pick the perfect audition piece, something that showcased her technical skill and emotional depth. The night before the audition, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with doubts. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she froze on stage? What if this was just another dream that would slip through her fingers? At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep. She took out her violin and played softly, so as not to wake Maria. She played all the fear and hope and longing she'd been holding inside for months. And somehow the music made everything clearer. Win or lose, she had to try. She owed that much to herself, to her parents, to the girl who'd walked into Juilliard 4 years ago with stars in her eyes. The audition was held in a beautiful concert hall on the Upper West Side. Elena arrived early, her hands shaking as she signed in. The waiting room was filled with other musicians, all looking confident and polished in their performance attire. Elena smoothed down her simple black dress, the nicest thing she owned, and tried not to feel out of place. When they called her name, she walked onto the empty stage. The judges sat in the darkened auditorium, invisible faces behind a table. The lights were hot and bright. The silence was deafening. Elena lifted her violin to her chin, closed her eyes, took a breath, and then she played. She played like she had nothing left to lose, like this was the last time she'd ever hold her violin. She played her parents' memory, her sister's dreams, her own broken heart. She played every midnight in that empty office building, every sacrifice she'd made, every moment she'd felt invisible. When the final note faded, there was silence. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, applause. One of the judges spoke. "Miss Martinez, where did you study?" "Juilliard, sir." "For a year. I had to leave for family reasons." "And you've been training since?" "On my own, mostly, and recently at the community conservatory." More whispers among the judges, then, "Thank you. We'll notify finalists within a week." Elena left the stage on shaking legs. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Whatever happened next, she'd proven to herself that she still had this, that 3 years away hadn't destroyed her gift. 5 days later, she got the call. She was a finalist, one of 3 out of over 200 applicants. The final performance would be in 2 weeks, open to the public, at Lincoln Center. Maria screamed so loud the neighbors complained. Elena just sat there, phone in hand, unable to process it. Lincoln Center, the dream of every classical musician in New York. "You have to tell him," Maria said that evening. "Tell who?" "Don't play dumb. Alexander. He should know about this." Why? We're not in each other's lives anymore. He made his choice. Did he, though? Maria pulled out her phone and opened a news article, because according to this, he made some pretty big changes. Elena took the phone and read. The headline said, "Heartfelt Industries restructures leadership." The article explained that Alexander had stepped back from day-to-day operations, appointing a new president to handle business affairs while he moved into a newly created position focused on innovation and company culture. He'd also started a foundation providing scholarships for artists from low-income backgrounds. The foundation was named the Martinez Arts Initiative. Elena's vision blurred. He named it after my parents. He named it after you, dummy. He's been trying to fix what he broke. Maybe you should let him. But Elena couldn't. Not yet. Not until she proved to herself and to him that she was more than someone who needed saving. The night of the final performance arrived. Elena stood backstage at Lincoln Center, wearing a borrowed gown, her grandmother's violin in her hands. The auditorium was packed. Somewhere in that crowd were the judges who would decide her fate. The first two finalists performed beautifully. Elena listened from the wings, her confidence wavering. They were so good, so polished and professional. What made her think she could compete with that? Then they called her name. Elena walked onto the stage and the lights hit her like a physical force. She looked out at the sea of faces and suddenly felt very small, very alone, until she saw him. Alexander sat in the fifth row, right side. He was leaning forward, his eyes locked on her, and even from the stage she could see the expression on his face. Hope, pride, belief. He'd come. Despite everything, he'd come. Elena's fear melted away. She lifted her violin and began to play. She played a new piece, something she'd composed herself over the past 3 months. It was about loss and finding yourself again. About being invisible and discovering your own voice. About loving someone and letting them go and maybe possibly finding them again. The music swelled and filled the hall. Elena forgot about the judges, the competition, everything except the story she was telling through her instrument. This was who she was. This was what she had to offer the world. No apologies, no holding back. When she finished, the silence lasted only a heartbeat before the entire auditorium erupted. People were standing, some were crying. The applause went on and on. Elena stood there, violin at her side, tears streaming down her face. She'd done it. She'd really done it. The judges deliberated for 20 minutes while the audience waited. Then the head judge took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. But first, I want to say that all 3 finalists showed exceptional talent. However, one performance moved us beyond technical skill into something transcendent. The winner of this year's competition is Elena Martinez. The world exploded into noise and light. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. People were hugging, her shaking her hand, asking questions she couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Then somehow Alexander was there, standing in front of her. His eyes were red like he'd been crying. "You were extraordinary," he said quietly. "I'm so proud of you. You came. Of course I came. Elena, He stopped, looking around at all the people watching them. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" They found an empty rehearsal room backstage. As soon as the door closed, Alexander spoke in a rush. "I was wrong about everything. I let fear control me. Fear of what people would think, fear of disappointing my family, fear of not being good enough. But watching you up there tonight, seeing you claim your dream despite everything, I realized something. You're the bravest person I've ever met, and I've been a coward." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I resigned from Heartfelt Industries. Well, not resigned exactly. I restructured. I'm not CEO anymore. I hired someone brilliant to run operations while I focus on projects I actually care about, including a foundation that helps people like you, people who had to give up their dreams because life got in the way. The Martinez Initiative. Your parents gave the world an incredible gift when they raised you. I wanted to honor that, to help other families keep their artists." He stepped closer. "But mostly, I wanted to prove to you that I could choose something for myself. Choose you, if you'll have me. Elena's heart was so full it hurt. I thought you said we were too different. Different worlds. We are different. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be. You make me better, Elena. You make me brave. You make me brave too, she whispered. I couldn't have done any of this without you believing in me first. You could have. You would have. But I'm grateful I got to see it happen. They stood there, inches apart, the noise of celebration muffled beyond the door. So what happens now? Elena asked. Now you perform your solo concert, you record your album. You become the musician you were always meant to be. Alexander smiled. And if you want company along the way, I'll be there. Not as a sponsor or a benefactor, just as someone who loves you, who's always loved you probably since that first night I heard you play. Elena's breath caught. You love me? Is that really so surprising? She laughed, tears spilling over. I love you too, even though you're infuriating and you made me cry and you almost gave up on us. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that, if you'll let me. Elena kissed him then, there in that small rehearsal room, while outside the world celebrated her victory. But this moment, this quiet moment between just the two of them, mattered more than any applause. When they finally emerged, Maria was waiting with Catherine beside her, both of them grinning. About time, Maria said. Now can we please go celebrate? My sister just won the biggest competition of her life. The four of them went to a diner, near campus, the kind of place Elena had been eating at for years, where the coffee was terrible but the pie was incredible. Alexander fit right in, laughing with Maria, swapping stories with Catherine, his tie loosened and his corporate armor completely gone. This was real, Elena thought. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect or polished or fitting anyone else's expectations. Just real people choosing each other day after day, note by note. Her phone buzzed with a text from Professor Davis. The recording studio wanted to meet with her next week. Her solo concert was scheduled for April. Elena looked around the table at the people who'd become her family, at the man who'd heard her music in the dark and followed it to find her, at the life she was building, one brave choice at a time. She was just a maid once, but she'd always been so much more. And now, finally, the world was ready to listen.